everyone. My name is Dr. Kat Lewis, and I'd like to explore the fascinating connection between science, spirituality, the nature of reality, and your health. If that sounds interesting to you, then please like and subscribe to my channel. Most people think that love heals because it makes us feel good emotionally, or it brings us closer to people, so it heals the gap in our relationships. But what I'd like to talk to you about today is something more literal, and that love heals because it changes the electric state of the body. We tend to assume that love is just a temporary emotion, something we feel towards certain people in our lives, a moment we experience between with those people or with an animal, or a reaction that we have towards something we adore. But what if the feeling of love, that warmth that we feel, that expansion, that bliss that we feel, what if that isn't just nice, but that love, that feeling, that vibration we feel is a physiological state with a bioelectric signature that leads to healing and regeneration? Now, to understand this, we have to first understand what kind of universe we actually live in. We live in a field of energy. Our best science is showing us that the seemingly empty space is not empty. It's filled with energy, enormous amounts of energy. And that energy carries information, and that information leads to the objects that we see. So everything that you see, all matter, as well as the physical body, is emerging from this field. So what we call matter is not primary. It's the visible expression of a deeper ordering field. So your body isn't separate from this field. It's made out of it, which means your body's not powered only by food and chemistry. It's powered by its relationship to the field. So health isn't just about what we put in the body. It's about how connected the body is to its own source. For health, we need voltage in our cells. So just like your cell phone, if your cell phone isn't charged, it's not going to work. If our cells are not charged, if they don't carry electrical potential, then they're not going to work either. Polarity. This tells the cells where, or the energy, where to go. And that's the electrical flow is the movement of that energy. We also need nutrients, and we need coherence. Coherence is internal ordering and structure within the body. This ensures that all of the above happens in an organized way so that information and energy can move throughout the body and we don't lose or dissipate that energy. Now, coherence is also about access to the field. It's about how the field propagates through our body. So the field always exists. Energy is never not there. But coherence determines whether we have access to that energy and information. So when we're in coherence with the field, that allows the energy and information to propagate through our biology. When we're in decoherence with the field, that impedes that transfer. So disease is a loss of coherence. Stress, trauma, fear, these are contracted states that impede that transfer of information and energy from it through our system. That disrupts the electrical harmony, that lowers our voltage, and that blocks access to the field's ordering and energy. So what causes that is when we're living in a constant state of stress, when we're living in survival mode. That's the primary cause of lost coherence and reduced access to that energy and information. So these are signs of chronic stress. So for most people, these are just normal. Most people live in a chronic state of stress. They don't understand, because we haven't been taught, that these symptoms are a sign that we're disconnected from the source of our vitality. So survival mode increases internal interference and it dissipates the energy instead of allowing the energy to propagate through our system. So why does a loss of coherence become a loss of voltage? Our cells need to operate at -20 to -25 millivolts for normal function. So this is from cellular biology. This might be new to you, this concept of millivoltage in our cells, but you probably heard, or maybe you have heard, you need a certain pH. You need a certain acid-base balance in your cells in order for your cells to be healthy. Well, pH is just the logarithmic scale of voltage. So we can convert pH to voltage and voltage to pH. For normal cell function, we need a pH of 7.35 to 7.45. That corresponds to a minus 20 to minus 25 millivolts. Now, to repair and grow, we need to access at least minus 50 millivolts. And to activate our stem cells, we need to, so that we heal without wounding, we need to access minus 75 millivolts. So that would be regeneration without any damage. We can regenerate at minus 50 millivolts, so we can repair, but there might be a scar, for example. So it's not true regeneration. You don't go back to the original blueprint. You go back to a modified version of the original blueprint, but you still tend to repair. Now, as the voltage drops, what happens is our cells can't hold on to oxygen, they can't uptake nutrients, they basically can't do their work. And what happens then is ATP, which is the energy currency in the cell, adenosine triphosphate, that crashes, that declines. Inflammation rises, and basically we're aging faster than we need to. Disease is really just the body aging faster than necessary, and we call it disease. So when coherence collapses, voltage collapses, and when voltage collapses, the body literally can't do the work of healing. All disease is a manifestation of the decoupling from the morphogenetic field, which holds the optimal blueprint for each person, each system in the universe. This is William Brown, biophysicist at the International Space Federation. So he's saying decoupling is that coherence. He's referring to that coherence between the field, which is sometimes called the morphogenetic field, that holds that information, the blueprint for each person. So now the question is, where does the body get voltage? We get it from exercise, because when we squeeze our muscles, that mechanical force is transferred into a chemical force or electric force. We generate electrons when we squeeze our muscles. This is why exercise is so important. We get it from food, sun, grounding, animals, and pets. So when pets are out running around, they're generating electrons within their body because they're squeezing their muscles. And then they're also picking it up from the ground. And then they come and sit near us and they transfer it to us. So absolutely, yes, we can get voltage from all of these sources, but our primary limiting factor is our access to the field. The body draws voltage from the field. The body is made out of the field, and the field is energy dense and information rich. That voltage is not created, it's actually coupled to. So when we come into coherence with the field, that determines how much of that energy can be transferred into our system and then stabilized. To get voltage high enough for regeneration, the system, us, has to become coherent with the field. In physics, energy and information aren't separate. So this is something that humanity will start to really understand, this concept that energy carries information. So energy oscillates, and that oscillation has a frequency, and that frequency carries the information. And coherence is what lets biological systems read that information. So think about your cell phones. We have electromagnetic waves coming into our cell phones. Those waves carry the information that we see as the movie that we're streaming. So you can think of it like that. So the field has the information that is generating the physical body. And that's what we are trying to come into coherence with. When we interrupt that communication or that transfer of information, that creates disease. So recent work in developmental biology has been showing that that electrical patterns, not just genes and chemicals, carry the information that directs how cells grow, regenerate, and even repair. So this is cutting edge research out of Tufts University, Dr. Michael Levin. He's bringing a lot of attention to this fact, but Rupert Sheldrake, a biologist, has also been talking about morphogenetic fields guiding form and function for probably 30 years. When we look across biology, physics, and human experience, we see the same principle operating over and over again. That is, form isn't just randomly assembled. It is guided by electric fields. And voltage determines whether regeneration is possible. And when coherence is sustained, even human form can reorganize itself. In other words, the organizing information, the organizing potential exists in the field, and biology expresses it when coherence is restored. There's a documentary by Joe Dispenza that's called Source, It's Within You. In there are stories of people regenerating, going to week-long retreats, and having access to certain types of meditations that create enough coherence with the field that people are being regenerated, people healing from cancer in a very short amount of time. There's in that documentary, there's a woman who had her thyroid removed. And after the event, and having done these meditations for a while, she went for a follow-up, and they found she was producing thyroid hormone, but she didn't have a thyroid. So when they looked again, they saw that it had grown back. And I predict that we were going to start to see this type of thing happen more and more, because we are now starting to understand the mechanics behind it, and that will allow us to achieve these states. So it's important to understand that what we call matter isn't fundamentally solid. It's an organized expression of the energy and information in the field. And that's important because when you start to realize that your body can change very fast, then you allow it to change. And it doesn't seem to be so solid. You can actually feel the vibration change when you just recognize that this actually isn't as solid as you think, and neither are the objects that you experience in reality. What determines how solid they appear to us is our level of awareness. And as we start to get more present, our inner senses turn on, and we start to experience the higher energy domains of the objects that are in front of us. That energy is all there. We know that there's subatomic particles that are making up the atoms and that are making up what we see. So that these subatomic particles are vibrating at a very high frequency, but we don't access that. We don't see it because of our normal level of awareness. Our senses haven't developed to allow us to experience it. But once we start paying attention and going into deeper meditative states and start expanding ourselves into the field, we actually get access to that information, and you start to experience how alive the universe is. So healing isn't about forcing a change at a material level. It's about restoring access to the energy and informational layer that organizes form, restoring access to the field. So our biology responds to energy and information first. The potential for form already exists in the field. Electrical and informational fields determine organization. This is why Einstein said the sole governing agency of the field or of the particle is the field. So it's the field that's determining how form manifests. If we change the signal, that changes the structure, and that changes how matter manifests. That changes how it appears and how it functions. So when coherence is restored, biology can naturally express the original blueprint that's in the field. So the point is that coherence restores access to that energy and information layer of the field. And you could think of that energy and information layer of the field that is you as your original blueprint. One of the biggest misunderstandings in biology is that the DNA is the blueprint. We have to get over the idea that DNA is the blueprint. DNA is the code for the hardware. DNA codes for proteins, and proteins perform the functions, and they give the body structure, but they don't have the information of global organization. The DNA doesn't know where to put a toe or where to put a finger. It has the information for what proteins to generate, but it doesn't know. It doesn't say, the code for DNA doesn't have the information about where everything goes. So the body references the field for that information. So more and more, our biologists are starting to understand that that information of global organization is carried in the field. They might use terms like morphogenetic field, but it's not in the DNA, it's in the field. And coherence restores access to that information. And then biology regenerates by recoupling to that organizing field of information. So the question becomes, what allows humans systems to come into coherence, maximum coherence with the field? Resonance. Resonance is what allows coherence to happen. So resonance is frequency matching. So when you have a radio and you tune that dial to a certain frequency, then we can pick up the radio waves that are traveling on that channel, that frequency. When two systems oscillate at compatible frequencies, then they're resonating. So when you meet someone, for example, and it's very easy to communicate with them, there's information flow that's going unimpeded. So you resonate together, and that's why it feels good. That's why the communication is so easy. It's so easy to be with them. There's no interference because you're resonating together. So energy and information transfer with minimal loss, and this is how our biology couples to the field. We have to become more field-like. So what does that mean? Well, if you were to describe this space, how would you describe it? Quiet, right? So still, so mental noise quiets. Chronic resistance dissolves, so that if you were spacious like the field, you would feel expanded. You wouldn't feel contracted. So you wouldn't be in a resistant state, like a contracted state. The nervous system would relax. If you became field-like, your body would relax, your nervous system would relax. The heart and the brain would become synchronized. And our awareness, if we were feeling expanded, our awareness would become open and receptive to the field. And we'd be able to be present. We'd be able to sustain attention without effort because we'd be expanded and relaxed into the field. So why this matters biologically is because when we come into resonance with the field, that initiates coherence. Coherence stabilizes voltage because we're allowing the energy to flow through us. And then voltage enables repair and regeneration. So the field, we come into resonance with the field, that creates coherence, that increases voltage, and then we have healing and regeneration. This is where the heart comes into play. The heart is the strongest coherence interface with the field. The heart acts as the body's central coordinating hub. It's the place where our physiology, the idea of us as a physical body, most strongly couples to the field, to the unified field. And for coherence to affect the entire system, it has to become embodied and stabilized. We can't just every once in a while close our eyes and feel the heart area and then expect it to change our biology. We have to be able to stabilize that state. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. If you think about it, in embryogenesis, the heart is the first to form. So it's the spark from the field that generates the physical tissue that is the heart, but then also organizes the energy in the field to create the physical body. So the heart is where coherence brings the entire system into the same rhythm. So this is why safety and love are felt mostly in the chest, because that information, that's our strongest nodal point to the field. When we come into resonance with the field, that allows coherence to develop, and then that radiates out into the rest of us. That's why it's so strong right there in the chest. So momentary coherence becomes regenerative only when it's coordinated across the whole system. So when we bring our attention to our heart and then we let that radiate out, that's when it becomes regenerative. And then we need to learn to stabilize that state. And I'll talk more about that in just a moment. So this is where the role of love comes in, but not just as an emotion, love as a state. Coherence between our individual field and the unified field is the feeling of love. It's a dissolving of barriers. So mentally, our mind relaxes, our mind quiets, our emotions calm down, and our physical body relaxes. So you feel more expanded into the field. It's the alignment of our consciousness with itself. When we're not aware of the field, we're not aware of ourself, because at some point, hopefully you're realizing that the field is our mind. The field is our consciousness. This is the fountain of youth. Our youthfulness returns when we reconnect to our source of energy. And it's always been here. We just haven't been paying attention to it. And that we close ourselves off to it. So imagine living in a state where you're constantly healing and regenerated because you are aware of the source of yourself. This is not mystical. This is your biology when it's aligned to the field. And this is what it feels like. This is what coherence feels like. Warmth, softening, energy shining from the chest, spaciousness, weightlessness, unimaginable bliss, deep inner peace, unexpected clarity. Because when we're not aware of ourselves, our mind we're really living in a dream. We're living in a haze because we're not aware of the true nature of reality. And you also can feel like a light being because there's different degrees of coherence. And so that's why there's so many ways to describe it. But ultimately, what I believe is the highest would be feeling like light. When this state stabilizes, it has a very familiar felt signature, and we call that love. This is a quote from The Way of the Heart. Love can only be welcome where love truly resides. And love resides within you as the core and source of your being. In other words, love isn't something we generate. It's what's revealed when the system stops resisting itself and aligns with its source. So when it says love can only be welcome where love truly resides, that's talking about resonance. We can only allow it to come through us if we are in resonance with it. And then love resides within you as the core and source of your being. That's talking about the field. So when we start to understand these things through the lens of biophysics and physics, so it stops being poetic and starts being literal. Okay, if I recognize the state, how do I stay here? So we've all felt love, but the challenge seems to be stabilizing that state. This is where practice and this tip come in handy. Love the feeling of love. Because when you love the feeling of love, the state naturally amplifies. So just try it. Close your eyes and bring your attention into your heart, your spiritual heart, which is that nodal point. It's slightly right of center. This is not the physical heart. The physical heart is a manifestation of the energy that is arising from the spiritual heart, which is just right of the center of the chest. In the Bible, it says, the heart of the wise is to the right, and the heart of the fool is to the left. This is actually literal. Scientists at the International Space Federation have identified this point of singularity, this nodal point within the field. It's called a point of singularity. And they believe it's in the right atrium. So it's in the sinoatrial node, which resides in the right atrium. And because most of your heart sits to the left, this is just slightly the corner of the right atrium where the sinoatrial node resides is just right of the center of the sternum. This a biblical verse is literal. It's not just a metaphor. It seems to be literal. And when you bring your attention there, you can experience it for yourself. So bring your attention to slightly right of center and just rest your awareness there. Let go there, like you're dissolving into that space. That is you bringing your awareness right where the field is generating you as the physical body. Now, you might feel just stillness there. Now, wouldn't you say that the quality of that stillness is peace? It's not disturbed. Now, some of you might actually feel the feeling of love. Now, if you don't feel the feeling of love, create the feeling. Use your imagination to remember a time where you really felt loved, or you felt love for something, and just create that feeling. You're using your imagination to create the feeling, but the feeling is a real effect. So your body is doing important and meaningful things right now as you're feeling that emotion. You're feeling that vibration. Now love it. Love the feeling of it, and you'll feel it amplify. So just practice that for a moment. Love the feeling of love. And then notice that feeling, that the feeling that you're feeling is coherence. That's the effect of coherence. And then when you love the feeling of love, you're creating greater coherence. That allows more energy to flow, which raises your voltage, which helps you stabilize the state. So just notice that happening. You become aware of the feeling. You love the feeling. It begins to amplify and it begins to spread. When you keep also simultaneously relaxing the body, you'll feel this energy spread through you. That's carrying the information. The deeper you go, you'll find the more blissful it becomes. That bliss is coherence. So think of your attention as a pebble, and you're dropping that pebble into the pond, which is your heart, the spiritual heart. And when you love it, you love the feeling of love, you're amplifying those waves. That appreciation is stabilizing the state and organizing the whole system. It's really beautiful. So biologically, what's happening is the nervous system is calming down. So your fight or flight mode is relaxing. Your parasympathetic tone is increasing. That's your rest and repair or rest and digest mode. Your heart field is becoming coherent. That's the bliss that you're feeling. Water is becoming structured, easy water in the body, which also allows for the microtubules to become super radiant. So they're emitting more light, as well as the mitochondria begin to emit more light and generate more ATP. Our cellular polarity is restored, and we're reconnecting to the blueprint. And that blueprint is being distributed throughout the entire system. So this might be something you haven't thought about before, but love isn't coming from another person. It's coming from us. It's coming from you. It's not something we're getting from someone else. The object of our desire, the object of our affection, is just allowing us to soften our boundaries enough to allow the love that's already within us to come to the surface. So knowing this allows us to choose to be in the vibration of love, to be in love, even when there's no one there. We can be in that frequency just by choice. We don't need something to love. We just allow it to come through us. So love doesn't heal because of who you're with. Love heals because it organizes your biology into a high voltage, coherent field state that restores the blueprint of your body. So I actually came to this understanding of everything I've shared with you tonight because of an experience that I couldn't explain at the time. I want to share this not as proof, but as what motivated me to find the science behind what I experienced. I wanted to understand it in a way that I could explain it to people. I saw this image and I thought, oh my God, that's exactly how I felt. So came on spontaneously. I wasn't trying to make anything happen. I was just walking through my house, went to lay down next to my daughter, and then boom, it happened. I suddenly felt weightless. I felt at one with the space. So I no longer felt like the body. The body felt weightless. I could see it, but it felt no different than this empty space. And then a little while later, I felt this energy just shoot right out of my chest, and my whole body felt like this. I felt like a light being. I could stretch my arms and legs beyond their limits. There was no resistance in the body whatsoever. So that was a profound state of coherence with the field, where my Hashimoto's disease and my shoulder injury of 2 years just instantly disappeared because it was me coming into coherence with that information, my original blueprint in the field, and boom, I healed instantaneously. So that was a highly coherent, high voltage state. Now, some of you might think that voltage sounds like it'd be uncomfortable, but it's really weightless. It's feeling like light. light is weightless. There's no weight, there's no mass in light. Photons are weightless. And so that's how it felt, like a light being. It was the most phenomenal experience I've had in my life. So, what I find fascinating is that these ideas did not originate with physics. They've been around for thousands of years and just expressed in different language. This is a quote from the Life and Teachings of the Masters of Far East. I actually do a course on this book. This was a book that was written in the early 1900s about an expedition of 11 men who went to the Far East to study masters, people like you and me, but who understood reality to this level and were embodying it. It says, Spirit is the primary vibrating originating power, an ever potent spring of perpetual and original life right within yourself. You may enter into Spirit and use its power by this simple acceptance or knowing that it does exist. Then let it come forth. So, through the lens of physics, you can see that Spirit is the primary vibrating originating power, is the unified field, an ever potent spring of perpetual and original life right within yourself. It's within every part of us, it's what's generating matter within us. You may enter into spirits refers to resonance. When we come into resonance with it, then use its power by simple acceptance. That is the effect of coherence. Use its power is coherence. So when you start to understand this, using the lens of biology and physics, and also the science of consciousness, then you start these teachings no longer seem poetic. They become literal. So everything I've been sharing with you today about coherence, voltage, and love, they all came from trying to understand that event that happened to me in a grounded way. So most people either never touch the state or they touch it accidentally, but they don't know how to stabilize it. That's what happened to me. I didn't know how to stabilize it. And that's why understanding the mechanism here matters. So after that experience, my senses changed. I could experience this energy coming out of my heart, my chest area. I didn't know what it was at the time. The months following, I could feel energy everywhere. I used to tell my friends, it's like I'm in an ocean, but there's no water. There's just waves of energy I could feel all throughout the space around me, and I could feel it in my body, and I could feel this energy radiate from my chest, especially when I paid attention to it. And what I found was that the more I paid attention to it, the more it would expand and radiate. So the eventually the feeling of energy out here went away, but I would walk down the sidewalk and it felt like everything was bouncing. The trees were breathing, everything, it became like a dream. Everything became very etheric and it was so lovely. But because didn't have the understanding, it eventually went away. And then as I started paying more attention to my heart, I was starting to learn more about the spiritual heart and what it meant. And then over time, as I paid more attention, the energy started coming back. And now I feel energy out here. I feel energy. My brain feels like it has changed. I feel energy moving within the brain. I feel energy all in the body. It's really beautiful. But in order to stabilize this, we have to change our understanding because the way the physical body feels and the way we experience reality is based on our understanding of who we are and what reality is. So when we think we're separate from this field of energy, that's our experience. We don't feel much. It feels like it's empty space. It is the belief in separation from spirit that has caused our forms to age and die. So I underlined this very important part. The emphasis should be on it's the belief. When we don't know it's there, when we don't believe in it, when we don't understand it to exist, we pinch ourselves off from it. We don't have access to that information and energy anymore. So why don't we stay in the state? The primary reason is we don't realize that the field is there. We experience empty space, and therefore we take ourselves to be isolated human beings, that I'm here, I'm separated by this big gap, between other individuals and the material objects I see. So the nervous system, because of that feeling of isolation, it automatically shifts into a self-protective mode, and that makes us contract. So stress and resistance are the biological result of that. So resistance is the biological consequence of forgetting our source. So what changes when that illusion of separation dissolves, when we start to realize that the field is the source of matter that we call ourselves? Energy is conserved, coherence stabilizes, voltage rises, and regeneration becomes our natural state. We'll just be constantly regenerating. So imagine what that would be like. Regeneration without error, because regeneration with error is disease. Okay? So over time, if we're regenerating with error, we're going to have fewer and fewer cells that actually work. And that over time, that leads to disease. So if we're regenerating without error, then we won't be aging so fast. We will look younger longer, and we'll feel stronger longer. So what I see happening today is that we have access to more spiritual information than ever because of the internet and because of social media. So, but intellectual knowledge is not enough. Talking about spirituality can feel calming and inspirational, and it can help regulate the nervous system to a certain extent, but coherence is a state. It's not an idea. You really feel coherence. You feel it like an emotion, a sensation. And biology changes only through these lived states. The nervous system must learn how to live from coherence, and that takes practice. So coherence must be entered, stabilized, and then lived. And then healing happens when that truth, when the understanding that the field is the source of the material body is not just understood, but lived. Someone once told me that they had read the life and teachings of the masters of the Far East, but they said they were beautiful books, but they're fiction. I can completely understand how someone could think that if they didn't have the framework from physics showing that the unified field is what's giving rise to matter and form. And if they didn't have the understanding of Vedanta showing that consciousness is the fundamental reality, is the unified field, and is giving rise to form. And without the direct experience of going into the heart, which is your access point to the unified field, then I can completely understand how someone would think that the book was beautiful but fiction. Because I too believed it wasn't fiction, but I couldn't understand just from the book alone how to achieve those states that the masters were talking about. It wasn't until I had the physics, I had the knowledge of Vedanta, and also the spiritual heart that I was able to truly understand what the masters were speaking about, so that it wasn't just a good story, it was something I could start feeling myself embodying. So when we have all three of these things, the teachings stop sounding like fiction, and they start describing what happens when the human system aligns with its source. And so that's why I teach courses on this. If you're interested in that, check out the show notes. So the biggest takeaway I hope you have from all of this is that in order to understand the field, you have to pay attention to it. We can't sit around and talk about it. We can read books. We can listen to podcasts. But the only way to actually experience it is to be one with it. And you can only do that by relaxing into it and just being, shutting down the mind, the mental processing that's going on, and just allowing yourself to merge back into the field.